Okay, so that was the end of the third Aliyah. The fourth Aliyah, we have in Deuteronomy 31, verse 10. It says, Vaitzav Moshe otam le'emor. Then Moshe commanded them, saying, Miketz sheva shanim b'moed shenat hashemita b'chag Hasukot. Those colors in the Hebrew literacy thing threw me off a bit. Miketz sheva shanim. So literally from the end of 7 years, at the appointed time, b'moed shenat hashmita. It is the year of the Shemitah. From shamat, which is like to release. Like a release. It's the year of release. You release the plants. You release them. You let the produce fall to the ground. You don't harvest it. You let the nitrogen return to the soil as the fruit decomposes. You let the animals thrive and have your fruit to eat on. The insects thrive, they eat on. The poor people can go around and they can pick it off and eat it. But you do not harvest it. It is a great act of faith, which is interesting. The previous verse, it alluded to the gift of Torah. It mentioned straight outright the gift of Torah and alluded to the gift of the Messiah, right? And now we have the faith that follows. The faith that is at the end of the years, the end of the age, that gets us into Olam Haba. And it was a similar faith that was required, even to this day, for farmers in Israel to observe the Shemitah. Can you imagine? If you're a farmer, this is how you make your money. This is how you feed your family. And for an entire year, you don't get to sell your crops anymore. How do you pay for the electricity? Right? How do you pay for, the gas? How do you pay for napkins? How do you pay for your food that you don't get? The farmer is allowed to take food for his family, okay? But he's allowed to harvest. So he's allowed to take enough that he can eat and feed his family. But, if all you farm is wheat, so what, you're just going to eat bread all the time? You don't get any tomatoes, you don't get ever beef, you don't get goats, because you can't sell it. You're not allowed to harvest enough to sell, or to barter, or to trade. So the Shemitah year is a great act of faith. And in those days, everyone was a farmer, right? For the most part, you didn't have tailors and you had a few merchants, right? But for the most part, most of the population, they're farming. Even the Levites, they had cattle, they had livestock, right? They might not have land that was totally theirs, but they had livestock. Everyone's trying to get by on what the land produces. Now, Chizkuni comments on this Miketz Sheva Shanim at the end of every 7 years. At the beginning of the 8th year, the Shemitah year, this was in order to enable the idle farmers to devote the whole year to the study of the Torah. Isn't that interesting? Okay, these Hebrew got mixed up somehow. It should be Kol Beva Kol Yisrael. So Yisrael should be over here. Sorry about that. Let me fix that in the notes. Should have Israel. This one is over here. That happens in PowerPoint. If you click on a word by accident, when you click, it'll move the word that you last had. So it's strange. So yeah, it should be Beva Kol Yisrael. Yeah, that's right. When the whole Jewish nation would come on the pilgrimage for Sukkot, right? So Sukkot is when this wonderful beginning of the study of the entire Torah would happen. It's really, really an amazing thing. And we have a Shemitah year coming up. We're entering a Shemitah year now that we've finished Rosh Hashanah. It's Shemitah. Don't worry. Unless you live in Israel, you're still allowed to harvest and sell your crops. The Shemitah mitzvot are for the land of Israel, for its holiness. To try to apply them to the Philippines or the United States or Canada or Great Britain or whatever, this is bringing down the holiness of Israel. Right? We do not do that. We do not apply that command. Other agricultural commands like the Orla year, that still applies. So sorry, if you just planted an avocado tree, you do not get to eat that avocado until 5 years from now. Okay, so the first 3 years it falls, and it's for the animals, for the poor, etc. The 4th year it's holy to Adonai, right? So it's to be given away to service people, and then the 5th year, that's when you get to eat it. So if you plant a seed, an avocado pit, or some kind of fruit tree, this is only fruit trees, only trees, doesn't apply to shrubs or bushes or whatever. Okay, then the Orla mitzvah still applies to you no matter where you live. So be careful. That's when fruits are not kosher, if they're not at least from a tree that's on its 5th year. So Dr. Vera asked, were they able to trace when the Shemitah year is? I don't believe the Shemitah year has been lost, right? It's easy enough, in part because up until, I think, the 1400s, you still had Jewish communities in Egypt reading the Torah twice per Shemitah year. So they had like a 3.5 year cycle or something like that. And so it was very easy for them to remember the Shemitah cycle because the way they read the Torah, you'd read it once, next time you read it, Shemitah. Read it once, you know what I mean? It's the end, and then Shemitah, you start reading again, right? So that's. I think we're pretty certain about when the Shemitah is. The Yovel is different. The Jubilee year, I think there's a lot of questioning about that. We're much less sure. No, it was not a few years ago when the secular Israeli government declared it a Jubilee year just for diplomatic purposes, to get people excited, to get all the Christians excited. It was not a Jubilee year a few years back when Israel did this. This was just, again, you have to remember, Israel is a secular government. Even though we have a lot of religion in Israel, you also have a lot of liberal, socialist party people doing stuff too, right? So, yeah, that's a nice question, Dr. Baird. Oh, right. Yeah. That's a good question. Yehoshua asked about the Talmudic 7 years. So, ironically, it doesn't start on a Shemitah year. That would be great, right? The Daf Yomi. We're about halfway through the Daf Yomi cycle. Not quite half, 2.5 years, I think. Yeah. So it started when this one modern rabbi invented it, and he got the idea and he just went with it. And so, unfortunately, it doesn't follow the Shemitah cycle. I don't think it does. And now I'm bothered. Can somebody Google that? Make sure I'm not teaching you wrong. Yeah, no. Daf Yomi didn't start 7 years ago. No, the current cycle started like 1.5 years ago. Yeah, so, yeah, too bad. I know, right? It'd be cool to just be starting over. Yeah. In case you guys are wondering what Yehoshua was talking about, Daf Yomi, this is Jewish Aramaic. Daf means a page, and Yomi means per day, right? So a page a day. So there's this wonderful practice, if you get interested in reading the Talmud, studying the Talmud, where everybody can read the Talmud over a longer pace, right? So what you do is you read one page, that's the front and the back, per day. Daf Yomi. And then after 7 years, you're done. And you've completed what's called Shas. You've read all of Shas. You can have a big party. There's Jews get around dancing all over the world. Everybody's happy about it, right? And if that's still too fast for you, then there's a Daf Shavua, which is a page a week. It takes 49 years to complete the Talmudic reading. Which, again, remember, Talmud is about 40,000 pages or so. That's why they call it the Sea of Talmud. But still, there's some parts are like super boring, and other parts are very interesting. Right? There's midrashes in the Talmud, and then there's legal cases, and then there's what happens if a guy has a straw roof and the straw falls down and causes a horse to get excited and then the horse hurts somebody? Who's liable? Stuff like that, where you might like that, you might not like it. But it's a nice discipline for Jewish study. And if you're already pretty strong in Bible, then you might really enjoy the Daf Yomi. There's a lot of resources, too, out there now. Yehoshua is asking, do they always start at the same time, or can they start when most of the leaders of Daf Yomi out there making learning material, they encourage people to hop in whenever they can, but to just hop in on wherever the cycle is, right? Just to hop in wherever the cycle's at. So, yeah, you can hop on in. Yeah. And you probably have quite an advantage, Yehoshua, because you know Aramaic, even though it's a different dialect of Aramaic that you know. This one, I think you'd pick it up fast if you cared to look at the Gemara, right? But there's lots of great English translations, too, out there. So, yeah, maybe we'll do that the next time. Maybe our shul will be at the level. The next time the Daf Yomi starts, maybe we can even have a Daf Yomi group or something, right? So, if you're just going to read the Daf, you can do it in 15 minutes. Right? But usually if you do with a little bit of study and learning to try to commit some of the learning to mind, it takes about an hour, 15 minutes, something like that a day. So, Nice. Okay, continue on. The Moed Shanat HaShemitah, in the appointed time, the appointed season of the year of the Shemitah year, the Chag HaSukkot. So Moshe commanded them to do this reading, to start the reading during Sukkot. Now, I have a nice commentary by the Jewish Publication Society. The scholar's name is Tigai, and he comments on this. This festival was the most propitious occasion for the reading, because it attracted the largest number of pilgrims and was the lengthiest of the festivals, right? It goes on forever, Sukkot, lasting for 7 days. Since it came after the harvest was processed and stored, the people could feel secure about their food supply for the coming year and could absorb the lessons of the reading with minds free of concern. Have you ever tried to study and you're not sure if you're going to pay rent or not? You're wondering, are you going to get the paycheck? Are you going to get a customer? Are you going to get whatever it is? Are you going to have enough money? Rent is due tomorrow, but yet you're still supposed to study something, right? Or you have some other bill that's due. They're going to cut your electricity, right? Is it easy to study or hard to study then? Of course it's hard, right? We're humans. It's most of us are not great pious Hasidim, and so it's a little difficult sometimes to have the mind of Mashiach. I trust God, it's going to be paid, no problem. And then you just study and you lose yourself in the study, right? We have a big test coming up or something. It's not so easy, right? It's easy to lose ourselves. So Tigai, I think, correctly comments that this is the reason for the reading of the Torah to be during Sukkot, because the farmers, the regular people, the Am Haaretz, many of whom were illiterate, right, in many times, they could listen and hear the Torah, and they could learn the teachings and the expoundings, the explanations that were given about it. And by the way, I want to make sure that I dedicate. Oh, it's erased. Okay. Someone had written me earlier some prayer requests, and that chat has been erased. So I cannot say the people's names, so I wanted to say we need to be healed. So whoever wrote that, maybe you can write that to me again. I'm not sure why it got erased. It'd be good. Yeah, I forgot it when I started. Well, Libby is one. We pray that Libby will have a complete refuah shalema, and we dedicate this shiur to her refuah, and also to Daryl, the brother of Duane from Matzati.com Ministries. Many of you have been praying for him, and he seemed okay, and now his Yet to Liberty de la Pena, and now his O2 levels have gone down to 69, and they've intubated him. So it's just like he relapsed, and so now he's on a respirator. So, this is, for many people, that's the last stage, right, of fighting this. And so he's got bacterial pneumonia right now, and his brother thinks that COVID was a misdiagnosis, right, because they didn't give him antibiotics early on. They thought it's just COVID. So if you please pray for them, pray for Libby, for Liberty, known as Libby, and pray for Marietta Antolin, and pray for Duane, then Abraham. We dedicate the shul that they might have with Ruach Shalimot. And anybody else who's suffering from any kind of illness. Hashem wants us to be healed. I believe it's not his intent that we stay sick for too long, Right, Susie Jackson, right? That's right. Please pray for Susie Jackson. She might be in danger. This American gal, as a violent ex-husband, has apparently stayed some kind of bad intention. So we pray for her protection, also that no harm will come, and that all those faithful to Adonai and his Mashiach will be protected. Now, the German scholars, Kiel and Delitzsch might have been Jewish, there's some controversy over that. In their commentary on the Old Testament, volume 4, page 147, they write, and the book of the law was read from day to day, with the subject indefinite, while Rambam and others supply Ezra, the reading of the law was only ordered at that celebration of the Feast of Tabernacles, which occurred during the sabbatical year. So perhaps the entire Torah was read during Sukkot. You can do this. This is definitely a realistic expectation for a society where they spoke biblical Hebrew, right? I've done it. I've read through the Torah spending 2 hours a day, read through it in 5 days. Actually, 6 days. I laxed on one day. So you can do it. Read through the biblical Hebrew can happen. So I think it's very possible that this opinion of Ibn Ezra and the Rambam is correct, that maybe it was just during Sukkot. Because if you're doing it all day long, my goodness, you could really do the Torah in one day, right? But with the teaching, the whole festival makes sense. Bessie mentions Rita Godinez. Oh, she's been intubated. Hashem Yarachem. Adonai have mercy. All right, continue with our fourth Aliyah, Deuteronomy 31, verse 11. We will inspect. And by the way, elders and founders of the Kahal, if you could please get word to me. I'm putting out feelers to see if we are going to change to the ancient reading of the Torah, or maybe do both, or what we're going to do with our Kahal. If you guys would prefer remain with the Babylonian system, which is once per year, the whole Torah, or we're going to change to the 3 years reading of the Torah, which is a slower pace, but it would allow us to be more in depth in our learning. So I'm kind of interested in doing it this way, but I want to make sure that all of our leaders are on board with that. I don't want to just hijack and make it so. The downside is if we do that, then we're a little bit different than Klal Yisrael, right? Most Jews don't do it this way anymore. Most do the yearly cycle. The plus side is, this is how Yeshua would have done it, right? And, so there might be some, you think about it. And let me know, please try to let me know soon, because we're coming up on the reset of the Torah very soon. Elizabeth is also not feeling too well. Yes, we pray for healing. Yeah, I know Dr. Vera wants the 3-year cycle. Yeah, I'm also highly interested. Very interested. For years, actually, I've been interested in this. Yeah, so in kind of reconstructing it. And we know what the Sidrot are. There's various Sidrot that are marked in the Masorah, in the Masoretic text. It actually marks what the readings were for the 3.5-year cycle, right? So, okay, cool. Louis likes it, so we got one vote in. That's great. Louis is in favor for the 3-year. One thing is, I read one article that suggested that the 3-year cycle might have started with Pesach, actually, because then a lot of the readings, they line up nicely with the holidays, but we're not going to worry about that. We're just going to start it, at least with Rosh Hashanah. I mean, not with Rosh Hashanah. Once we started Genesis, we start Genesis again. Nellie likes the 3-year cycle too, okay? You don't have to comment publicly if you're for or against, because if someone's against, I don't want them to feel like they're the oddballs out, right? So maybe the Tans, you let me know soon. Tom, you let me know soon. Other founders and elders, let me know as you can. Yeah, and we'll kind of, if you're against, let me know why you're against too. Ted says we'll pray for complete healing before Shalomah. Yes. Maybe we even pray right now. Avinu Malkeinu, Ken Yiratzon Ki Tuapeh Bevakasha Et Kol Anashim Asher Bechului Achshav. Maybe your will, God, that you will heal all of the people who are sick right now, whom we've mentioned and those whom we've not mentioned. Please send forth your light and your power. You alone are able to do miraculous things. You who led our ancestors through on dry ground. You led us through on dry ground. Even though we did not deserve it as idolaters, we didn't deserve it, but you still led us through on the dry ground. Though the sea complains, as we're told in Midrash, that we didn't deserve it, you allowed it. We ask that you would send forth your healing on everyone from our community, all of our family and friends, any of us who are ill now. Please, Lord, may it be your will, God of our fathers, the God who can do miracles, the God who is able to deliver. We ask you not by our own righteousness, not by our merit, but we ask you to honor the Zechut Yeshua, the merit of Yeshua, your Son. We give you praise and glory, and we ask also that you fill us with faith that we might be able to believe for the miracle to happen. All right. Verse 11 says, Bevuchol Yisrael lirayot et pnei Adonai Elohecha b'makom asher yivchar. When all of Israel will arrive to see pnei Adonai, to appear. Sorry, this is lirayot, to appear before Adonai, your God. Ba'makom, at the place, asher, which yivchar, he will choose. So this has not happened yet. This is talking about the future when there's a place which Adonai has chosen for his name, which this means for a while it was Shiloh, right? Shiloh. So that was where the ark would rest. And then eventually it was Yerushalayim, and that is his eternal place. That is where we're told in Revelation that the new Jerusalem will come down from heaven. So Jerusalem is the eternal place that God has chosen to place his name. Jasper mentions he's also experiencing trouble with breathing. King Yeratzon to the Rabbi, sure, may it be his will that your hypoxia be healed. So let's examine this at the place. Why specifically we should appear at the place where Adonai chooses for himself? Why not just appear on our own farms? Tigai comments that learning to revere, learning to fear the Lord, that this was the aim of reading verses 12 to 13, and this is one of the regular aims of visits to the quote-unquote Bamakom Asher Yivchar, the chosen place. That the place itself where the sacrifices would happen, where the fire would come down from heaven, where the cloud would be at, where the Ark of the Covenant was at, where we'd see, after even generations, the priests and the Levites doing what they were founded to do, that this would teach people. By coming to this place, it would teach us to fear God. Perhaps the journey was part of it, right? Going on faith, to not be robbed, to not have to worry about vagabonds, right? To not get murdered on the way or bit by a snake, whatever. It was an act of faith to go on the journey and to walk up to the chosen place. Tikra et haTorah hazot neged chol Yisrael be'oznehem. You shall call this Torah, or read. You shall read or call this Torah, call out, recite probably. You shall recite this Torah in front of all of Israel in their ears, right? Meaning in their hearing, right? That they might hear it. So Rashi comments that the king read from the beginning of the section where it said, these are the words, Deuteronomy 1:1, as is set forth in Tractate of the Talmud, Sota 41, first part of the page, upon a wooden platform. So the king would read on a wooden platform that was erected in the forecourt, meaning of the temple, right? So he was elevated, so it was easier for people to hear. So the king would start reading. So Rashi's of the opinion that this is just the book of Deuteronomy being read. So that's why he's saying the king would start with Eli HaDevarim, and then he would be on that platform and he would read on. And then the priests and the Levites would be mingled among the people, explaining what the words mean. So the king would pause, and the people would, and the priests and Levites, they would explain to individuals. There are a lot of Levites, right? So they could mingle throughout the crowd and explain, oh, this means that. This ancient language means that, or this word means that, right? Because even then, there might have been some words that people didn't understand, and they certainly might not know the decisions. Yehoshua says it's interesting. How did all the people hear without microphones? Well, I think also you would have the Levites perhaps repeating, right, what the king said. So he's up on a platform, so that helps. And then you have the priests and the Levites, they also have copies of Deuteronomy with them, right? So maybe they're a little out of sync. Who knows, right? Maybe they even had echoing, echoing what he's saying exactly. So I think it's not too hard to envision, right? I mean, granted, eventually you're going to have lots of people, so nobody's going to hear all the people are talking. John says they had Bluetooth. Yeah. Okay, fourth Aliyah, Deuteronomy 31, verse 12. We continue. All right. It says, Hakel et ha'am, hanashim, v'hanashim v'ataf, v'gerecha, asher b'sharecha. Hakel. So this means assemble or gather, like make a kahal, right? Make a kahal. The Masorah tells us this word is only 3 times, according to the translation by Karasik. It's only 3 times in the entire Bible. It occurs only in 420, 8:3, and 28, right? So in those various places. So I guess it's 4 times there, here and in those places. And so that's kind of amazing when you think about it. The entire Hebrew Bible. We've only got it in these places. It's only in the Torah, and it's only in 4 places. So whatever significance there is in there, it might be interesting to look at those other places and see if we had time. Et ha'am, the people. So gather together the people, assemble the people, probably better. Assemble the people, the men, Anashim, Rashi usually says these have to do with like important guys, and the women. Okay, I'm sorry, it doesn't mean that here. And the toddlers, or the handicap, or the elderly who can't walk, the gerecha, and your foreigner. Now, this is really beautiful. As I mentioned last time, I can't remember if I told it to the kahal, or this was just my Hebrew students that we did this with, but there's something really interesting here. So, assembling all this stuff, right? But then we get your ger. That the ger, this is the singular form of the suffix, right? Your, it means your, like ka in Tagalog, your, but it's a singular form, right? Singular. So this tells us it's the individual's responsibility to care for your foreigner. That is the person, for our context, it means the person, well, it could be a little foreigner, but it could also mean the person who is new to Torah, right? The person who is turned away. And I apologize if I said this in the drash last week. I don't remember if it was the drash or I just taught my Hebrew students. So to turn away, the one who turned away from his traditions, from his December 25th Christmas, right? Again, for those people coming late, Happy Christmas. Today is the birthday of Yeshua. According to the astral prophecy in the book of Revelation, he was born on September 11th, 3 BC, right, using the secular calendar. So when the earth was at this place around the sun, that's when he was born. And that's the way we're doing dates and stuff. So celebrate on these days of awe the birthday of the Messiah. It is today. If you want to give each other gifts, whatever, I don't care, whatever. But just maybe making knowledge, keeping in mind that this is the actual day, it's kind of interesting. Yeah, the Jewish date, I don't remember the year. I could find the year. There's differences of opinions on this. I said it earlier. Yeah, so maybe I'll send you the earlier part of the recording. For those who were on time, they heard that already, so... Jewish guilt, you gotta love it, right? The Catholics think they got guilt, they got nothing on us. Jewish guilt is the worst. Yeah, I understand people gotta commute. It's hard to be on time. You gotta commute, you gotta, No, I'm just kidding. Yoshua's got an excuse. He's in England, so it's pretty early when we connect. And Yochanan also has an excuse, more of an excuse, because he's in the States, in Florida. So those guys both have excuses for not being on time. Okay, right. Jasper writes, Yom HaYuledet, Sameach Yeshua HaMashiach. Happy birthday for Yeshua HaMashiach. Okay, even better. I don't know if you should have told me that. Yoshua was on time, but he didn't pay attention. So I'll talk to you about it later tonight. Okay, so continuing on, Gerecha, so it's your ger, because people come to Torah, invariably they get harassed by family members, they get harassed by friends, they get harassed by so-called friends, they get harassed by quote-unquote church mates, they get harassed by co-workers. What, you're taking off a Jewish holiday? But you're Chinese, aren't you? Right? So they'll raise the eyebrow. What, you're lazy, you just want to have the Jewish holidays off? And so there's a lot of oppression, actually, that happens to the grafted in folks. And so it's important that if you have someone who's newly grafted in, maybe you've been in Torah for 10 years, and you're fully assimilated, you're a Ben or Bat Yisrael, a son or daughter of Israel already, it's time to maybe take on an apprentice, take on an acolyte, take on someone who's going through what you went through, and you can kind of help them out a little bit how to deal with it, and be a family for them. Yeah, be like a foster parent or foster brother for them. So the Torah, it's hinting at all this with gerecha, with that nice singular ending there. Asher bisharecha, who is that? Again, your gate, right? The singular form. Your. I'm talking to you. You know who you are. You got that foreigner living next to you. Leman yishme'u, so that they may hear. Sforno has an interesting comment on this. He says, this is the Leman, in order that the wise men in the congregation would understand. So this Leman yishme'u, uleman Elohechem, v'shameruhu lasot, et kol divrei haTorah azot. And so that they might study, they might learn. Oi, why? What happened? Is my other note not there? Oh, there it is. Okay. So the first one, that they might yishma'u, this is so that the wise people could understand. The second one, lema'an yilmadu, this is in order that the less intelligent members of the people could learn it for themselves, right? So that they could learn. This is according to the great Rabbi Sforno commenting. V'yare'u et Adonai, and that they might fear Adonai, Elohechem, your God. Notice here, up above we had cha, singular, right? Now we're back to plural again, right? So the very fact that we have these two different forms is a nice hint that this is happening. So here it's chem. You guys, even if you don't know Hebrew, you should be able to see there's different forms here. So chem means your, also it means your, right? Your. But this is plural. Plural. It's like y'alls or yuts, right? So this is so that he's y'all's God, he's the community's God, all of our gods, not just singular, right? So it's the community responsibility now that we all will learn to fear him. We help each other to fear him. This shamaru, and that they might safeguard. This u ending is again they, plural, right? You can see it here. They. Okay, I can zoom, but I can't color when I'm zoomed. Okay, fine. Forget that. La'asot, to do. Et kol divrei haTorah hazot, all the words, all the things of this Torah, right? And again, it could be just Deuteronomy, right? Torah can mean just that particular book of laws. Okay. The fourth Aliyah, verse 13, says, Uvenehem asher lo yadehu yishmeu velameduhu v'yirah et Adonai Elohechem. Okay, and their children. So let's look at just the u here. Now there's an interesting comment by Ehrlich that this is a vav emphaticum. Vav emphaticum, which means it's like an exclamation point, right? It's like saying, they will do it, right? Definitely it's going to happen, right? Definitely. So when you vav emphaticum, it means like emphatic, right? It's exclamation point. Or those of you who know Espanol, you can start a sentence with an upside down exclamation point, can't you? Right? Like that. So it's like, their children, asher lo yadu, who do not know yet. And Tikai comments nicely on this. He says, singling out the effect of the reading on the children reflects Deuteronomy's repeated concern with shaping their character. That's the children's character, the next generation. And Moses' present concern with preparing for the future. So a lot of people, they come to Torah later in life, and they have a lot of regret, right? Like, oh, if I only had started sooner, I could be such a tzaddik now, I could know so much. You know, I could be tap dancing and juggling while reciting the Hebrew or whatever. But look, there's still hope. It's the next generation. And if you miss the boat on your own kids, well, how about other people's kids? How about, if you've got extra money, you can sponsor other children's learning or get an expensive, nice, children's Torah for them, right? Or there's other things we can do so that our community's children, the next generation of Messianic believers, will not be as lame as this generation has been. I don't have anybody in mind. It's just, you feel it. If you visited some Messianic synagogues, really got their stuff together, right? And wow, the learning and and then you've got other places that you visited a decade before and it's still, right? Okay. It's like very, very, I don't know, not everybody wants to grow, right? We get lazy. And, I really want Messianic Judaism to be a real witness, a real testimony to our brothers who don't know Mashiach yet. That you don't have to give up Torah. You don't have to, be some lazy or just this laissez-faire attitude against the Torah when you come to believe in Messiah. And I think this is the spirit that has haunted people when they accept the Messiah, the spirit that has kind of taken over, the various churches that are mentioned in Revelation, some of them, that they've turned away from God's law. They've turned away from his love language. They've turned away from do not sin that grace may abound, but abstain from sin. Go forth and sin no more, like the Messiah tells people who are caught in sin. Continuing on, conducting the impressive public reading every 7 years would mean that no generation would need to wait until reaching adulthood before having the experience. So every child in their childhood, they'd hear the Torah, they'd hear the teaching. Can you imagine growing up with that? All the communities are seeing how important this is to the whole civilization. Everybody's here. Even, cousin so-and-so who seems to not care about God, he's here because he dare not to be embarrassed to stay at home. Every child would have it soon after reaching an educable age, right? Reaching an educable age, right? So being literate, they'd still get to hear the Torah. And then again as a young adult, and then again as a normal adult, and then again as a middle age, and then again as an elderly person, a senior, and then again as a great-grandpa or whatever. Yishma'u v'lamadu. Let them hear and let them study. The yirah, to fear et Adonai Elohechem. Adonai, you all's God. Plural there. You all's God. Chem, plural. Again, it's okay if you don't know Hebrew yet. You can start getting it piecemeal. Take some notes. Kol hayamim. Kol hayamim. Asher atem chayim al hadamah. Asher atem overim. I missed that one. Et hayaden shama lerishta. Okay, so kol hayamim, all the days is what it means. All the days, or every one of the days, this could mean. Idiomatically, this means like all the years. Oftentimes when we see days in plural, it means all the years. Now, it's interesting. This forms an interesting... Okay, Yishmu, I left up there. Sorry. Sforno says either simply that their ears will hear sounds, or if they are a little older, that they will hear words, right? So even the little babies, Sforno saying there's power to just hearing the Torah. This is one of the reasons we read it aloud. You never know who's going to hear it, right? Whether it be a human, or whether it be a spirit, or whether it be a jinn. I'm just kidding. No such thing. Kol hayamim. In the Midrash Lekach Tov, it elucidates. Sorry, there wasn't. Okay, I got this from Sefaria, and there's no English available. It says Revot Yamot HaMashiach. Okay, so expanding in the days of the Messiah, Ovrim et Hayaden, crossing over the Jordan. Kiyom Shatem Ovrim Atem Yoshim. Okay, that's not so much there. I'm not sure why I put this here. This is talking about when you cross over into the Jordan, then you will possess it. Because we have the Har Yarden here. But what was interesting to me was this Le'avot Yamot HaMashiach, right? Which it's particularly interesting to me because if you read it differently, if we change the vowels, it could mean the death of the Messiah, right? So, again, just kind of a little thing. But that the fulfillment of this would happen in the days of Mashiach is what the Midrash Lekach Tov is getting to. Okay? When you all Chaim, when you are alive, right? And of course there's this hint in the word Chaim, and whenever we see it about eternal life as well. Not just life, but Chaim, eternal life. Al Hadamah, on the ground, in the earth, which you are crossing over there, crossing over the Jordan, thither, to there, to possess it. Right? So we're getting the preview of things to come. And in many ways, the land is tied to Mashiach. It's a kind of a hint about Mashiach. Hey, you did it. This is the end of this part. Watch the next one. To support our projects, you can donate at www.patreon.com/Hebrew Literacy. You can do a single donation or sign up for monthly donations.